So the fall out of paradise. Long time ago, human beings were like the animals. This is very simplified. Steiner has 6 different aspects to the human being. 2 aspects that we no longer share, that we have specifically gained above and beyond the animal soul, if you want. So in this ancient time, people were more like animals. That would have been the dreamtime world of the Aborigines, where we were still connected with the spiritual world. You know, an animal has no conception of time and space. Not in the same way. They don't have this Verstand. This is so difficult to grasp. This is wonderfully expressed in the German by Steiner. The tree we were not in the cognitive ability, in other words, yeah, Verstand, cognitive abilities. So the tree in the middle of the garden, that of the Erkenntnis, and again, that in the German is so much clearer. It means to recognize something, to dissect something, yeah, to have this cognitive aspect being added to the human animal. That happened at some point, by which point we fell out of the Garden of Eden, i.e. this animalistic sense of being. It makes perfect sense now. And it comes further down. Then we go into this stage of where we're still have this interconnectedness, this sense of hive mind. But then this Christ intervention is, there's this scene where he spits in the earth. This is very, very condensed. I should really go through the slides that he has in his presentation. So when Christ spits in the dirt, none of these stories are literal. They are all analogies of that describe the human condition, the development of the human being. So he spits in the sand and mixes his spit with the sand. So this his ghost, he spits his ghost, his spirit into the earth and mixes it, and that's when the individual soul is born. The individualization of the human in its development from the animalistic stage to the individualistic human being, that not only has it eaten from the tree of Erkenntnis, this recognition, the tree of recognition of the world, of how things work, putting, starting tools and analyzing things, so logical faculties are being added. Then we go from the still connectedness, this hive mind sort of personality, into the individualized soul or individualized person that we as modern human beings are. Another thing that I've noticed, and I want to point out in this connection, if you look at art in human development, so you see the Egyptian art, which shows human beings sort of sideways, and albeit beautiful, but very simplistic, right? Very symbolic. Everything is very symbolic. You go into the Middle Ages and you see what, if you give crayons to a variety of children starting at the age of 8, say, to the age of, I don't know, 25, right, to the adult person, and you allow them to scribble and draw, somewhere in this development, maybe around the age of 12, you'll see how the people in the 12th century would paint flat, and a 12-year-old will draw houses and scenes in this flat manner. He can't actually draw perspective yet, 3D if you like, yeah. And then later on in the 15th, 16th century, we get the birth of the golden ratio being expressed in pictures, and 3D being added via shadows, etc., and optical illusions by placing things further backwards. the 12th century paintings are all very flat. That is the consciousness of the people in the 12th century, was the consciousness of a 12-year-old. The whole thing has to be seen under the light of developing self-consciousness. That's what I mean. If we can't even read the story of Genesis correctly in this light of having a look at the development of the human species, then heck, we got no chance of reading the rest of that book in any, correct, meaningful sense. Do you understand what I'm trying to explain to you in a very, very compact form here? So we share all the souls and aspects of physical and spiritual body with the dogs, except for two different parts, the Verstandesseele and the Bewusstseinsseele, which is this logical mind, and then the Christ mind, the individualized spiritual being that perceives itself separate from others and separate from nature, etc., etc. pp. You can then understand personal karma as well, because up until that point, when you have the animal has no karma as such, as it lacks those abilities, so it doesn't produce anything. It doesn't know good and bad. It acts from instinct, and the early man would have acted out of instinct, instinctual actions. And then when those two soul aspects come on top of it, you become a being that is able to self-reflect, that is able to recognize good from evil, that is able to make correct or incorrect choices. And we do have this karma when we hurt others, when we don't follow this, what we should be following, these higher moral aspects of that were given to us, right? These teachings of, love your neighbor as yourself, all that. You see where this is going, and you see why we're in such a muddle today, because we look at all these ancient texts and we lack complete understanding of what it is that's being described there in reality. So when it is said that Christ died for the sins of the world, it means this aspect, this Christ aspect in us that has that ability to decide, it does indeed take on the sins of the world, because you, as being present in the world, you do commit these things that are wrong, and you are taking on these sins of the world, of the physical flesh, and you take them across into the spiritual world, where you sit there and look at them and think, oh shit, what have I done? I got to come back and rectify what I've done there. That is what means Christ takes on the sins of the world. So that aspect of you, that higher Bewusstsein, the self, the knowledge of the self, that Christ aspect, is taking on the sins that your body, your physical body being, has committed in this physical present moment in time, and you take that with you. So you, as the Christ being, are responsible for your own actions. That's what that means. So can you fathom that our ancestors didn't view the world the same way as we did? They viewed the world very much through the eyes or the feeling, emotional body, everything that an animal today still does, right? So in effect, they were walking with the gods. The gods were present. The gods worked through them. And if you think about the gods as the instincts that the animal has, the animal reacts to its environment in an instinctual way. If you want to explain that as an ancient, you call that the gods work through the soul of the dog, right? I'm just trying to translate these texts in a different, maybe more comprehensible way, like Steiner did. The trouble with Steiner is he uses antiquated language that is even foreign or strange to read for even German people. I found this wonderful channel that has opened the door for me to understand what it is they're talking about. So they walked with the gods. They were under the influence of instincts. So they were without sin. Because the gods, the instincts, worked through them. They had no knowledge of themselves. They didn't have these two higher aspects. So we are supposed to integrate those two higher aspects. We haven't even managed to become what Steiner calls a proper, fully integrated human being that has managed to integrate all its parts into its existence, i.e. the recognition that we are more than just our physical bodies and that we are responsible for our deeds and actions. We haven't integrated humanness properly. In other words, we're just on the way to becoming what is destined for us to become. So when the gods left us, with that, what also left us was our ability to fully plug into our intuition. We lost those intuitive senses that were stronger developed in our animalistic stage, when we were like the animals, when we were walking with the gods, when we were one with nature. Are you starting to see a picture? Apparently, and this is not just Steiner saying this, Manly P. Hall said it as well, the lodgers, the secret lodgers who held this secret teaching of all the ages in their own coffers, so to speak, right? They were supposed to release all of this information beginning of the 20th century, because human beings are now entering as a whole, as a species, their 21st year, right, of development. And we were supposed to gain access of all of this. And well, now it's being released, but look at what it's causing, utter chaos. And nobody really, it's so diffuse, and everybody is now rebelling against these, gods and this and that and the other, and nobody really understands properly what these texts are talking about, and that they've been given by people who had a different sensory experience. And everything that Steiner says in his writing, in this channel that I found where it's being explained, tallies up with these near-death experiences, who talk about these other entities that are lovingly guiding us in the spirit world, right? So this spiritual world consists of many, many, many different spiritual entities. You have the same in the Apocryphon of John, where different spiritual beings knit together the form of the human being. There's, I don't know, there's all these Latin names, all these crazy beings that, the one knits the lungs, the other one the nervous system, and blah, 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 right? These are these spiritual, I have not the sight to see them and how they act upon matter. But evidently, there's spiritual forces that put it all together. Which is why you can't evolve stuff. You can't, this is just so ridiculous. You can't evolve a giraffe. There's the lowering of the giraffe's head is such a complicated thing. There's all these valves and God knows what in that animal's neck and closer towards the brain, because otherwise all that blood would just sort of it wouldn't work. It wouldn't be able to drink because its brain would bloody explode. The same with the eye. All these other things, you can't evolve one from the other. Plus, there's no evidence in the fossil record of any in-between anythings. It's just not there. So how does this work? Oh, just give it a few billion years. Not bullshit. Bullshit. It doesn't work. And I think they're now coming to the same conclusion. Well, then should we not look at these texts in a different way? Should we not start to think that maybe the human animal at some point had a different perception of the world altogether? Like the Aborigines say in Dreamtime? There's so much here that we can't even fathom, not with our minds and not with our stupid technological abilities, with these microscopes that we have. Even that, think about the virus theory, right? There's people out there saying, I've listened to a guy who is a spectral microscopist, the ones that using these highfalutin microscopes, and he says, well, we look at these things, we haven't got a clue what the flip we're looking at half the time. So there's people out there that say what they have cleverly termed as viruses are nothing but toxins that the cell chokes out when the cell is being poisoned. I forgot the word, and they've given a word as well, a name, because we name everything, don't we? Like Adam sat there naming everything, right? That's our conceptual mind. That's that tree of erkenntnis. Yeah. So when that happened, we experienced this fall out of the higher worlds, if you like, the more connected worlds. We got this little parcel given that enabled us, and some people will hate this, to dissect nature, this logical understanding, because the only way to find our way back again is by, in a sense, grasping nature, understanding nature, ruling over nature and learning from our mistakes there as well is entailed in that. But most of all, have this ability to dissect deeper and deeper, to understand nature so that we can find our spiritual self again in this nature. Because we lost that. We fell from it. So God's given us that ability, given us that, so that we can find our way back to it. For that, we had to be falling deeper and deeper and deeper, so we could be so distant and so unreflective in a sense that we are committing all sorts of crimes against nature. But we needed this rulership over nature in order to find ourselves again. So you're in a garden, as it were, that gives you the ability to experience life. What does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to have a physical body? Well, lots of pain, lots of joy, lots of pleasure, lots of yum yum. Good and bad, right? All that shit. How does a child learn? You can tell a child, don't touch the hot plate, don't touch the hot plate. Eventually that child will touch the hot plate and it will learn that the hot plate hurts. We'll never forget that lesson. So how do you teach a young soul to respect life? Well, you chuck it out there and you let it experience what it's like when you hurt something, when you hurt yourself. So it learns to understand, to respect life, to be kind and loving. I don't know whether this is a pre-simulation of the real world and whether we are indeed young souls that can't be let loose on some pristine other world that there may exist. I don't know. But what you learn here is to be empathetic to other living things. If you have the senses for that, if you're not a brute, if you're not guided just by your instincts. I don't know how many lifetimes it takes, but I understand the story now. And it gives me some form of peace. Seen in that light, that whole little story actually explains free will in that sense then. So the soul got tempted by the body. It acquired this logical mind, this self-knowledge, and in that sense it has turned away from God, because previously God worked through the human being, and like in the animals, and the man could only do as God wanted, i.e. these instinctual behaviors, and henceforth he's able to distinguish between good and bad. And the tree of life is the soul of unembodied wisdom, which in a sense then is our eternal home. It's where the spirit resides, isn't it? Isn't that fascinating? So because man fell out of this paradise, he was henceforth free to see good and evil, free to find truth and lie, free to choose between love and hate. And without that freedom, true love would not have been possible. Because previously he was under the influence, well, he was just enacting through the thought of God, i.e. their instincts. So I've never heard another philosophy that explained free will to me as perfectly as Steiner does. I'm sorry. All this, everything is one and God is one and God is all, leaves you without free will. Because then, if God's playing all the parts, then, heck, do you understand? There had to be this separation. This way of finding out true love. But it's the only way you can discover true love and true empathy, by being free to make mistakes. Because love needs freedom of choice. You have to have that freedom to choose love